Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1292 of our daily content grind, and today I am still focused on Kaiser. Probably because he left such a dent in my wallet last night. But more to the point, Kaiser becoming a successful Haslab, potentially Transformers' most successful Haslab. Tune in a few weeks from now, we will update the numbers when they are ready to be updated. But because this one went over so well, because we now know a few things. Number one, you can get away with a $300 Transformer Haslab. We also know that a combiner would work as a Haslab, or I guess multi-packs in general can work for Haslab. So now we're kind of left to wonder, what else can we get away with now that we have proven that Kaiser can work? Now, the natural thing is going to be to go toward other potentials from victory, and we'll cover that too, but frankly, there is a gambit of combiners that could potentially work as a Haslab that hit that interesting note between popular enough that we will dedicate millions of dollars to getting the toy made, and not popular enough to actually work at retail. Because I still firmly believe none of these Haslabs for Transformers would have worked at a retail level. I had someone argue with me, or attempt to argue with me over on Blue Sky, going like, but they're doing Devastator at retail. You're telling me that you're telling me that like they're going to do that, but these couldn't have been? No. Because you're talking about the single most popular combiner in Transformers, one of the most iconic designs in Transformers. You have no idea how many casual people know Devastator. These are going to be combiners that casual people do not know. They are only for the dedicated and hardcore fans, just like Kaiser, just like most of the things released on Haslab. In this case, let us start with the victory stuff, because that does reach that level of obscurity that is not going to sell to your common Transformer fan, and that starts with Road Caesar. This is one that we know that Takar's designers absolutely want to do, but this is a complicated figure. It's a Brain Master. All three members are Brain Masters, just like Starsaber. So that is a gimmick that has to be incorporated into all three of these components, on top of the fact that, you're forming the entirety of the upper body out of just one member. This is a lot. This is a lot. See, and to engineer something like this is going to be exceptionally tricky, because when you have most of that mid-body mass of the leg formers dedicated to the Brain Master elevator, you're not going to be able to cheat this transformation and have the thighs of the character like flip out from the body of the other Brain Masters, meaning all of that upper body, everything above the knees, is going to have to be handled by a single member, and they're supposed to all be the same size in robot mode, by the way. You'd have a lot of cheat parts, or you'd have to throw another member in there somewhere. This is exceptionally tricky. I don't think this would sell at retail because of obscurity, and I don't think they could make it for retail because of the complexity. It's all down to that Brain Master thing getting in the way of a lot of its engineering. But Haslab, I'm not sure he's popular enough for Haslab, or well known enough for Haslab. We know Kaiser because Kaiser is just such a freaking cool combiner. I can't say the same for Road Caesar. He's got his fans, but we will admit he's kind of an awkward boy, isn't he? It does feel wrong to leave the Brain Masters out. I just don't think this is the way to do it. You might be looking at like a Titan down the line or something. One that I do think would work at Haslab, because you need the level of engineering, is Landcross. And I love Landcross as a combiner, as a toy system. This again hits that level of obscurity that I don't think would work at retail, though I will admit, play value wise, this would be an attractive toy line for a kid. I will admit, like, this would work if you could figure out how to do it affordably at like modern Transformer budgets. I actually kind of see this working as something that would be an attractive toy for kids. You have the Energon Power Link style gimmick working in, and then the combiner, right? That's a lot. And Haslab would be a great way of approaching the budget that kind of gimmick requires, but if you can do it in such simple manners here, like let's keep this in mind. Landcross is accomplishing this with late 80s toy engineering. You know, you could incorporate new limbs, you could or new points of articulation, you could rework some of the parts to transform smoother, you could redistribute some of the bulk. But if you just use this as a roadmap, there shouldn't be any reason you couldn't just do these at retail. You could actually sneak a Generations Landcross into a modern kids Transformer line and just not even mention it as such. So Haslab would definitely be the way to do it if you want it as complete and integrated as possible, but I don't necessarily think it's required. Also, both of these characters hit something of a difficult point when it comes to being a Haslab, and that is you need some kind of stretch goal. Haslabs typically have 3 different stretch goals. You don't really have options for Road Caesar or Landcross, much as I would love for that either of them to happen. So maybe neither is good choice. Maybe there's other ways of getting them across. I feel like Landcross especially is something that Takara would do on their own, and Hasbro wouldn't even be involved, for being completely honest here. Now, someone who might work at this level, that would be Dino King. Now, we did get a new Dino King toy, technically. We got the core Dinobots retooled into them because that seemed to have been the intention behind those Dinobots all along. It was a convention exclusive release. It was not mass retail. It is still a niche character, to be fair, but it's a really cool design. And hey, you do have some built-in stretch goals. So admittedly, if you really want a stretch goal when it comes to this, the obvious one is the Pretender shells, but I feel like that would only be like one stretch goal because there are 6 of those shells and they would have to be very large, and potentially redesigning them to have some articulation too. Haslab would be a good approach to it, but I feel like that would be like the only stretch goal, right? So like, okay, we need 10,000 Dino Kings to be pledged before we know we'll be able to produce this toy. But if you get all the way to 18,000, we'll also produce the shells. And like anything in between those 2 points would be like minor stuff, you know, extra weaponry, effect parts, that kind of thing. You know, all the budget to any extended amount of pledging would go to making the shells happen. So that's where that one comes across to me. I feel like that'd be the only way to get the shells. Let's put it that way. Now, there is a chance this one does eventually hit retail level. I will admit that. But I think this is the only way. Haslab would be the only way to get the shells as well. And I say this is going to be retail eventually. I do feel like Dino King would eventually make his way into retail at some point because 1, dinosaur toys always sell, and 2, Hasbro's been trying to get Monstructor out for a long time now. And you think about it, those Dinobots are basically Monstructor because this is the original basis for Dino King. Like in a super weird roundabout way, that's the engineering path for all of this. So they could technically make a Monstructor. Now, those Dinobots would have to be heavily retooled. But the base engineering to make it happen does exist there. They could reuse that as a skeleton for the toy, and it would still work. I say that Hasbro's been trying to do this for a while because we know that the Power of the Primes Abominus, the Terrorcons, we know they had some pre-tooled parts attached to them that actually were designed to make modern Monstructor. Early shots of Hunger, I think it was. Someone else, maybe. I can't remember. Like there were like little leaks here and there that showed Monstructor heads on these other characters. So it exists. It was an option that Hasbro was weighing. Obviously, we never got it. but it was planned at least. So we do know that they are interested in doing Monstructor, but getting him out is a tricky endeavor. I feel like he falls under the same umbrella of, yes, he's popular enough to actually be known in the greater fandom, who would be willing to drop money on him, but not popular enough to work at retail. And again, same scheme as Dino King. Shells is the very end stretch goal. Little things in the early, like the 13,000, 15,000 levels. And yeah, that'd be about the only way you get the shells for these guys too. What about other G1s that we've left out so far? I mean, there's Ryden, I guess. MPG just did Ryden, and it is technically generation scale because for some reason that was the goal. I think the goal was just to make sure the trains were the same size as typical model train toys in Japan, and it just happened to make the robots Combiner Wars scaled, so that's how that goes. Ryden has never been available easily to American fans. There's the limited run of MPGs that Hasbro released through Hasbro Pulse in America, but ultimately, this is a combiner that's never really touched American shores properly. And it is true that just because it's done for Masterpiece does not necessarily mean that it's off the table, because there's no Generations version. You know, something that's more true to the original toys, you know, or something that is, I don't know, like not given like D&D like dwarf proportions. I feel like there's room to do another one. I feel like there is room to actually do this in proper generation style. And again, this is again something I feel like would fit the bill for it. It works for Haslab. It wouldn't work at retail. We have been told for many, many years, train toys do not sell in the US. That is just a fact of the market because trains are not a huge deal to kids in America. The occasional fan, yes. Thomas the Tank Engine, yes. Generally, it's just that big noisy thing that keeps you from getting to school on time. It's not a piece of culture like it is overseas. So, Ryden is possible. I don't know what you would do for stretch goals, though. Tracks to display it on, obviously. But it's pretty much the same as display bases. You know, in between those 2 points, I'm not exactly sure what you would do. So, possible, not as likely though. The one that everyone brought up though, you know, and I think the one that everyone first started shouting for was Rail Racer. Now, I do agree. It hits that level of popularity. And like I said, they could skip out on Victory. They could skip out on G1 for the next one altogether. And it wouldn't surprise me in the least. So we're going to focus on a bunch of non-G1s they could do for a little bit in this video. For Rail Racer, yes, I think you are spot on in that it's this level of popularity and fans that would make the Haslab succeed, but not popular enough to work at retail. If I recall correctly, it used to be like message board rumor that someone at a convention was asked about like a re-release or repaint of Rail Racer for Universe 1.0. And some exec from Hasbro said, the toy sold so badly, we're never running that toy again. It's just not happening. Popular with the hardcore fans, didn't work with kids because kids don't care about trains. Train toys don't sell. The one thing I would warn you about, I don't think anyone realizes how big Rail Racer actually is. You go back and watch the RID cartoon, or if you go look up a size chart for RID characters, Rail Racer is gigantic. He towers over Omega Prime, and you already had to pay $250 to get Omega Prime. So be prepared. If they actually do a Rail Racer for Haslab, you'd be looking at a $400 set, minimum. Now, you also run into the same problems. Okay, you can do tracks for display bases, but what other things do you do? He doesn't really have anything attached to him as character-wise that you could use for stretch goals, so that also becomes difficult. And that is the same for his series counterpart, Landfill. Again, a level of complexity I'm not sure would work at modern retail. Again, a popularity level, like a notoriety level that would work for Haslab. And I would love to see that whole gimmick system work with tighter modern engineering with better proportions, so the combined mode looks a lot better. This does have a lot of really, really nice potential if they were willing to go this route. You know, and that I think would depend on a rail racer. If they figure out stretch goals and they figure out someone would actually be willing to pay the price it would take to make rail racer happen, I think Landfill would be on the table to do a Haslab from. I don't think he's there now. You hit the same problem with stretch goal thing, but I think with construction vehicles, you have a little bit more to work with effect part wise. Nothing really lore based, but something that can add to the playability, certainly. Okay, so let's diverge completely here. The other ones that come to mind when it comes to Haslab are things like the Beast Wars. Now, for Tripredacus, this is absolutely Haslab. The only way you could get this to work at retail would be overseas in Japan, where you would be basing it on the name that I'm never certain of how to pronounce it, Tripledacus, like the Japanese version of this set. And then it wouldn't have the right colors to be Tripredacus. So, double-edged sword there, because obviously no cartoon presence in America. This only existed as a toy. I don't think this would work as a Haslab because of that lack of notoriety. Because it is only known as a toy. Because these characters only appeared in shadow in the in the Beast Wars cartoon. And not enough detail to actually even positively ID them as this combiner set. Yeah, this one wouldn't work for me. I don't think this one's going to play well. But I do have to consider it because, of course, we have to talk about Magnaboss as well. This one is Haslab potential. I will admit this one does have a strong possibility for it. Now, because it is more notable in Japan, I do think this would be based more on that version of the character, the Beast Wars second version. So you wouldn't be looking at the yellow head on Prowl. You'd be looking at Lio Jr. with the blue head looking more like Optimus Prime. Now, a nice, quick, easy stretch goal would have been a reversible head or a interchangeable head. So you could have best of both worlds. If they wanted to be super cool about it, they could just engineer that in so the head could like flip around and you could just decide which head design you wanted him to be. I'm sure between Beast Wars, I'm sure with Beast Wars second material, you could pull in something to work as stretch goals for him. Not entirely sure what, but I do think this one's more viable. But that said, I think the new small commander size, like what we got for like Star Convoy, I honestly think that's perfect for something like this. You know, you make Ironhide leader sized, like, and you make him like form up around like deluxe / Voyager versions of Silverbolt and Prowl. Yeah, I think this is better suited at like our brand new commander size. He feels like that level of complexity. And I do think this would work at actual retail level. I get the feeling like at the very least online exclusive retail level, this would work. I think Haslab would do his engineering justice, but I don't necessarily think this one's necessary for that. This one would work. This one would work at retail. Here's one to throw a left field idea at you. I know I've mentioned this before, but hear me out. So the way you would have to work this, now this set you would actually be able to do for Haslab because you have stretch goal items available. You have mini cons, you have effect parts, you have actual props from the cartoon that you could work in. Even if it's just like, here's minicon chips for all of your like Armada based toys to hold on to. This could only work at Haslab because the engineering level on Jetfire that you would need and the obscurity of Overload, you have to do. I feel like these have to be Haslab. I do not think this would actually work at retail level. The problem with doing that is you're not just going to do Jetfire and Overload as a Haslab. You need to be an all-in-one package. Like, they actually need to have everything they need to do everything they're supposed to do in the one box. That means instead, what you have to do is you have to actually include a repaint. You have to include the Power Links repaint of Commander Armada Optimus Prime. Now, because of that, you make the price of the Haslab way lower than normal, because a lot of the engineering is already done. We're just repainting it, and then the main thing for the Haslab are the 2 toys that are coming with it. And you get away with that because Jetfire was never in his Power Links colors in Armada, right? I believe that toy did. Yeah, that toy got repainted at retail, but that was never, it wasn't actually in the show. Meaning, you could play with this and you could make this work just as it is. It's kind of far-fetched, I will admit, but I think it's the only way you get those 2 out. We've been kind of like, as a fandom, I think we have kind of been tossing and turning about how you actually do Jetfire, because everyone wants the other combiner parts for Armada Optimus. But what do you actually do with him? Like, that's a lot of complex engineering to form that set of legs, and you're going to want those legs to articulate. The original one couldn't do that. Now you got to figure out how to make that happen. And now you got to work it into a modern, a modern retail budget. Haslab, my friends. Haslab is your answer. That's the way this works. Like, you could do it as Commander and just make it just like a super dense Commander. But Commander is so taken up right now by combiners, and you can't do Studio Series Commander for this guy, obviously. So I think that would be the only way to do it. That said, let me pitch the one combiner that I think has the strongest possibility of actually making it as a Haslab. And that is one that technically has already been done in Generations, but not well. And I think it deserves better. I need to see these guys. I need to see these guys. So, can I even remember their names offhand? I should have wrote it down because I never looked these guys up. So, Die Atlas, obviously. And then I believe the names are Roadfire and Sonic Bomber. Let's go with that. But seriously, like, Die Atlas and his crew are overdue for toys all their own. Yes, there was a 3-pack that was done in Legends in Japan. It's not very good. They are extremely retooled toys that don't quite hit the mark as far as this design goes. They're a passing, it's a passing grade at best. Not to mention, you have Micromaster forms that have to be included as well, because these form, bases for Micromaster stuff. That needs to be done properly as well. And that gives you all the stretch goals that you need. So things like, well, all of them have a Micromaster partner. Well, the Generations one never included those. Here you have the opportunity to do that so they can feel more complete. You can put in extra additional like effect parts. You can include the Zodiac. So, there could be like a proper Zodiac accessory for Die Atlas as a stretch goal. Obviously, display bases, flight stands, etc. That works as well. Additional parts so that these can like play along better with like Star Convoy, or like whoever, like that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that pops up in my head. And then if you want really stretch goals, throw in more mini-cons or Micromasters rather. So like if these all have their Micromaster base modes, then you need Micromasters to play with them. And it's a great opportunity to get some Japanese styled ones out there, some that never came out in the US. That would be the vibe. I feel like this is a really, really good shot at getting done as a Haslab at some point. Whether or not they consider it on the table because of the Generations version, the Legends version, whichever one you want to call it, that's to be seen. But that said, I think it's a pretty good choice. But we'll have to wait and see. And we're going to be waiting a long time before we find out what the next one is. So that's the idea for today. Let me know in the comments, what combiner would you like to see as a Haslab? Now that we know combiners can actually work as Haslab items. So that's it for me today. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time. Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.